Okay, thank you. We're here on this wonderful evening, 38 degrees, rain, just wonderful out here. And it's Tuesday, April 3rd. We'll bring the meeting to order at 7 o'clock on time. And our first matter this evening, we are not going to hear Chappaqua Crossing. The applicant has withdrawn the application for this evening. Some issue as to whether or not we'll hear it on April 17th or May 1 or both. So we go to our first item, and this is a public hearing, and the public is out here in huge numbers, droves. We have to beat them away. Got those early tickets sold, thank goodness. This is Majumdar, Random Farms, subdivision lot 102, application for a site development plan, amendment and stormwater pollution prevention plan for a swimming pool at 19 Random Farms Drive. Yes, please, yes.
You can take the mic off.
The applicant has indicated he's going to make this worth our while this evening, so we have trash talk already here.
Yeah, I like trash. That's not good. That's
Planning board trash talk.
okay.
Low.
My name is Troy Wojciechowski, engineer for the Majumdars. The project before you is a site plan for a proposed in-ground pool and adjacent patio. We were before you several months ago, and I think we made out pretty well, and we're sent away basically to address the consultant's comments and to provide some more information based on the board's comments. So I think we did pretty well with a couple hiccups, which we'll go through. One comment that the board had was to add the location of the adjacent homes and the adjacent lots on the site plan, which we did. And
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw one.
yeah, we did it on the Audette side, which is the north side. The south side actually has a road going back to the homeowners association parcel. And
That road clips your applicant's property, doesn't it?
yeah, you can see it on the lower side there, the asphalt drive. And I brought a couple pictures for you to see. So that would be the south neighbor. So it's looking probably a little closer to the south neighbor than where the proposed pool is. But that's the view. You can see there's some shrubs on the applicant's property and then some evergreen trees alongside the access drive back to the homeowners association's parcel.
So is the south side the side where the asphalt drive, because this is due north going this way, so it's down here?
Correct. That's the view. We're looking.
So I
That
don't,
way.
so the road is in that area as well? I guess
Yeah,
I
you
see
can
a
kind
little-
of see it.
Yeah, touch there,
Right
yep.
Yeah, right along there. So you can see the southern neighbor is pretty well screened from the property. And I think I have a picture, not a great picture of the property to the north. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's kind of looking at the back corner of the property. So to the left of the photo is looking into the next door neighbor's rear yard. And that application was before you a couple years ago because I did it, and it had a sports court and an in-ground pool. So I
That's
think
the-
just over that clearing on the other side of the fence is probably just about where the sport court is.
And had a rain garden back there as well? as I
Correct.
recall, right?
Yeah, same concept with the stormwater. Let's see. I had another picture here. Okay, and that's a picture kind of looking more towards the house to the north. That tree that you see right there close to the patio will be gone as part of this project, but you can see kind of in the background there's an evergreen tree and some other trees along the property. So it's not fully screened.
On the right, is that the sport court with the orange?
Yeah, yes it is, yep. Yep, and you can actually see their pool cover in the far back there. Okay, so there's, pretty substantial screening. It's not completely screened, but I don't think that's necessarily the goal. It's definitely broken views of this application. applicant's backyard. Let's see.
So that tree is the one that you refer to as the clump tree?
Correct. That's right. Surveyor language.
Technical term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would use something more technical. Multi-branched or something. I don't know. Okay, so why don't, if it's okay, I'll just run through very quickly Mr. Scioli and Sabrina's comments and Mr. Coleman's comment letters.
Well, before you do that, can you tell us any changes that you've made in the
Oh, yeah, sure,
plan
sure.
since we last saw it?
Yep, probably the biggest change we made was to the second story addition, which is this area right here. We previously had it squared off with the house, and the house is actually an existing non-conforming situation. The back corner of that house is, I think, 19.94 feet from the property line. So what we did was we actually...
20 are required,
Right,
Yeah,
20 is
right.
required.
yes.
So what we did, and that's part of the hiccup, which I'll get into in a second, we showed a slightly smaller addition so that we would honor the 20-foot setback. I think we actually showed 20.2 feet. I think that was the main technical change. We didn't make, we changed locations of the rain garden, basically to try to miss the existing trees, but basically fit it in amongst the trees. So there was work related to that, but I think the patio, the pool, the proposed deck addition, all that basically stayed the same. So it was a lot of technical
So you
comments.
tried or you succeeded
In which
with the
aspect?
trees, avoiding the,
Oh, yes, no, I think we succeeded pretty well.
thank you.
That's my opinion.
Oh, in your
I'm
opinion.
biased.
And paid for.
Didn't they,
That's
teach-
right.
didn't they
that's right.
teach facts in engineering? Or,
Yeah, I skipped that class. I didn't go to that one. Okay, so if I run through these just very quickly, I can kind of get to the two hiccups and see what the board thinks about them. Go through Bob's letter first because that's the easiest. Pretty straightforward. A couple more technical dotting the i's and crossing the t's. I think Bob was generally satisfied, and he can chime in with the design. He wants a little bit more information, and he made the point, of course, that we still have to do the deep test and perk test for the storm system. But besides that, I think everything is pretty straightforward as far as addressing those
Have you heard back from DEC yet?
regarding.
The Bob's ST4 point?
No, that's just a matter that we have to submit an NOI. We prepared the SWIP.
No, once
in-
we sign off, I sign off on the stormwater with the acceptance form, it gets sent up to Tony Chiaffi in Albany, and actually processes it, and then you get an acknowledgement letter sent to the design engineer. So we would like to get that. It's more
Okay,
of a
yep.
formality, but I do put it in all my memos.
Yeah. So that'll get it in DEC's system, and that'll be taken care of before we break ground. Next, why don't we go to Mr. Coleman's memo. Probably the key one, and that's what had me generate the colors on the presentation plan. As you recall, this is in a conservation subdivision. The blue line was the approved original clearing and grading limit line. The red line is the existing cleared limit, previously cleared by the previous owner. The green line is our proposed clearing and grading limit line, and that restores over half of what was cleared beyond the approved line. And the reason that we're showing the green line is to provide some lawn space for the children that live there. The Mahumdars have several young children, and if we were to restore the clearing and grading limit line up to the blue line, you can see it would be a couple feet away from the proposed pool, which isn't ideal as far as sun goes. And you can see how limited the area of the rear yard of actual grass for the children to play in is. You know, you might ask, well, they have a pretty large front yard. So I brought a picture of the front yard. It's rather steep, not really suitable for playing. So that's the front yard looking south. Random Farms Drive is up to the right there. So it's not, you know, suitable for children to play in.
Why?
Yeah.
Is the grass too?
It's steep. No, well, I don't know. Actually, I haven't
Does it look steep to
fallen
me?
on it.
I mean, to me, it looks fine. I mean, it's a great place to, you know, kick a ball downhill or something.
Into the house, sleigh ride. So there's another picture of the northern side of the front yard looking from the house.
I'll tell you one thing that strikes me with that, now I see that part of
It's
it
fairly steep there.
Right.
fairly steep, and what I would suggest there is, why not move the grading line over and plant some stuff there to, you know, to sort of make it safer for the children to play there because they won't run out on the road.
Or clear out some of that, was it Pachysandra? Give yourself more lawn.
Yeah, I think that's Pachysandra.
I mean, there are options in the front. I mean, it seems to me that the yard's big enough, the front yard's big enough for children to play in. But, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's my opinion that typically the children play in the backyard where the parents can watch them and be
Right,
away
so
from
we
the
should be
street.
talking about the front yard then.
What did we do with the neighboring parcel? How far back did we go on that clearing and grading limit line when we put the rain garden in and the sports court and the pool? Can you put that picture back up? That
Yeah,
shows a little bit of that property?
Let's see if we have it on the plan,
Right.
actually. Don't know if that came over or not. I know that clearing and grading limit line didn't come up far, because you can see it probably ran just past here.
So
So it's probably even
is the
about with,
home in the same proportion? I mean, basically in this area, as I'm pointing here with green.
oh, I'm sorry.
You can see the cross hatching.
Is that the
Yeah.
house?
Yes, that's the
Yeah, that's
So
the
house.
that's the house, so it's sort of in the same,
Line.
right, same
Line,
alignment. Yeah,
sure.
thank you, Tom. And we have, I remember we brought this up a little bit closer. I just wonder what we did with clearing and grading. I know that we have the rain garden back here.
Yeah, I remember the rain
As I
garden
recall, This is
was,
the conservation, is this the conservation
Yes.
area, right?
Yeah,
right.
that is the conservation area, and my memory believes that where that infiltrator was, that's where it was supposed to be restored.
Yeah. that's what I
Because
thought.
we had the discussion of they didn't want it, they wanted to bring it back to the property line, and you
Right.
folks had the discussion, and this was one of the instances where we allowed the infiltrator within the clearing and grading limit line, and they were supposed to do additional planting.
Right, to make it more
Right.
natural.
Exactly.
So I just wonder, the picture that you show, though, doesn't look like there's that much restoration in that area.
This is, I don't know that this is
Just the
the,
picture through the
this
bushes.
is just what they had, that they took off of plans that they had done previously to add to this to show you where the house was. I'm not sure what's there today.
No, I was
Yeah.
referring to the
Photos.
earlier pictures that we saw,
Oh,
where we
yeah.
saw, you know, the buffer.
Yep.
But we
Yeah,
could
you didn't
also
see that much
across.
trees
You
in
couldn't
it.
see much. It looked
Yeah.
fairly empty, frankly, back here.
And I don't have any
Garden
photos of that
Steve, do you have
property.
any recollection of what we did?
I know I did a follow-up inspection and everything was planted back then, but
Good.
I'm not sure since then if it's been maintained.
Along roughly what line, Steve? Is it?
Where the infiltrators are,
Yeah, just in front of the infiltrators,
Yeah.
probably is the.
all throughout that area.
And do you recall again where the previous line
Clearing and
was?
grading, no,
Was it-
Theirs was to the
Tom,
back
is your
property line.
microphone on?
from what I remember, I think it was.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah.
Yes.
Where, I'm not sure what that represents right there, I think it was somewhere right in that
It was sort of
vicinity.
in alignment with this one.
Oh, the approved line?
The
Yeah,
original
I think it was
approved.
probably similar,
Yeah, and then it was
Somewhere.
extended for the sport,
For the
court, right?
sports court.
Yeah, sport court.
right. But I know, I remember next door had cleared property line to property line. There
Yeah, I
wasn't
recall
even that red
I
line.
recall it,
Yeah,
yes.
they really had cleared that and had manicured lawn all the way to the property.
Well, my thinking is that there's some expectation of consistency, it seems to me, from homeowners. So if we if we went where they're proposing, it wouldn't be inconsistent with what we see next door. Whether or not we want to do something in the front perhaps to make up for what we're giving in the back, do something else if the front's not being used.
Could you scroll so we can see the rest of the property?
Sure.
Thank you. A little bit more right about there. Thank you. What's the nature of this area here? Topography and so on? Is this a flat area?
It's relatively flat. It's kind of, I would call it gently sloping. It's grass, and that one kind of hatched area is actually the construction entrance, so that won't be left there.
This right here?
Yeah, yeah, that's,
So, is north up on this drawing?
yes, yes. You know, we would also consider whether, you know, we could plant additional trees. You know, right now, the existing trees in the rear of the property are actually pretty nice. You know, this property certainly wasn't clear-cut like the next door neighbor's was. You know, there's, as you can see, dotted on the current plan, there are quite a few, you know, pretty mature trees back there. We would be, you know, open to planting additional trees above and beyond what's typically expected for, you know, a restoration of the cleared area.
Can you share with us why you carve those, why this doesn't do that?
Can you speak into your microphone, please?
Can you share with us why you did that, and this isn't a continuous line to get that back in there? Is there something there? Is there rock? Is there
That's-
tree? Is there?
That bump out is where the rain garden is. So actually, you know, this line has to be demarcated with something. We had proposed boulders, but as I'll get into, we're going to recommend, based on Mr. Coleman's suggestions, a split rail fence. So we thought it best to have the rain garden on the non-cleared side of the clearing and grading limit line, but actually it's going to have the same effect and look of, you know, a natural area, because the rain garden's going to be planted with, you know, natural type plants and things like that. But that's what the weird shape is. That's basically the upper outline of the rain garden.
So it looks like you just decided to line it up with the setback line.
Yeah, that was our original kind of thought on this. You know, let's give back some as part of this project.
But that was sort of arbitrary. I mean, that's a line on the drawing, so that's where you ended up going.
Yeah, that's the rear yard setback line, is the dash line.
So this is a side yard?
Yes, yeah.
So I'm wondering just how useful this area is. I mean, we're talking about play space. I guess you're thinking that this would be, I know you want sunlight for the pool. I'm guessing that this slopes down, is that right?
It was fairly gentle here.
Yeah, it's fairly gentle.
Right.
I see what you're saying, to maybe
So
pull
in
up on the south side there.
In the summertime when you're using the pool, sun's relatively high. I don't think you're going to have a problem. I mean, I'm not saying the blue line is appropriate for the pool.
Right.
I'm just suggesting that you have more than adequate space for that purpose here. But over here, is there any use for this area? I'm wondering if
We pull it
we
up and
couldn't
make
do
it up that side.
we couldn't do a compensating sort of thing and
See if I can-
pull your green line up along here.
Let's see if we have that on the photo here.
I mean, I would think that would help for the privacy of the pool and the backyard and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's right now, as you can see, it's planted with those, what are those, hydrangeas, maybe? Rhododendrons, yeah.
Rhododendron, maybe.
That's it. Should have brought my book with me.
Forsythia? Yeah.
Chris Schmidt's here from Neve. They're the pool builders and really the site designers on this, and the client rep. I would think that would be a reasonable kind of give and take in that area of the yard. I don't
Chris,
think,
can you come up to the mic and-
there's a little bit of slope there, and
It's really not-
it already
not
has some
usable, right.
vegetation there.
Right.
Yeah, we had anticipated on
First, can you state your name
Oh,
for the
sure.
record, please?
Chris Schmidt with Neve Pools.
You can hold that.
You have it all? There's a whole- Come on. That's part of the deal. Earn your money. We had anticipated, doing some screening work there anyways, because, obviously anybody accessing the tennis court, we don't want them looking into the backyard. So I think that's a reasonable expectation to give some back. They really just want to have some area to be in the backyard to play with the children, away from the street.
That's what backyards are for.
Exactly.
Right.
Certainly.
Well, I think that, that's good, and I think what Tom is, that idea there is good, and I think you might want to pull it in just a little bit on the other side of the the pool, and get some more vegetation in there.
Over here, you mean?
Yeah, because that's where the view of one pool to the other is kind of high, or one play yard to the pool.
Right.
Yeah, so I would say there, and again, on the front, I think you can put something on the front, which would help actually stabilize that grass slope if you have deeper roots.
Right. Now, would we be able to plant it but not put a fence maybe along the side there, just, aesthetics?
Fences, I'm not worried about it too much over there. It's that back
In the
line.
yeah, correct.
That's really the issue. So if you had like, if the fence were, sort of maybe petered out along this old line, but you plant it in here, and, or you peter it out, you change it here and you nick it here a little bit.
Sure.
But if you put some vegetation up here with deeper roots, some bushes or something, which I'd be happy to count as part of the clearing and grading line outside of, that'll stabilize that, add a little beauty in the front. And if the kids ever wanted to play in the front, they have some modicum of privacy, and the ball doesn't get kicked out into the street as
Right.
easily. And the same thing with privacy over here. And then you mentioned, Tom, some privacy over here too. So that would make me happy.
Okay.
Would it make you happy, Steve?
My only concern is from experience, if you don't have something that serves as a barrier,
Okay.
future owners or don't realize that that has to stay as a natural area, and, the next applicant will be back in, with the same issues. So that's why we usually recommend some type of permanent
Well, I don't
demarcation.
I don't mind that. I have two suggestions. One, keep the fence in the back, but when you run out of the place where you don't want to have it, then put some in-ground markers, not boulders, but, something that's almost even flush with the ground so the kids don't trip on it, but it's a marker that, oh, gee, what is that? And you can do the same thing in the front, too. You could put a string of markers with no fence.
Right. And I assume that, being on the side there, they're not going to want to eliminate any of that anyways for screening
Right.
purposes,
It's
even the
more
next owner.
Or the encroachment straight back, I think, is the.
Okay.
It's also the north side, so it won't impact the sun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, monuments would probably be the least obtrusive,
Okay.
if you wanted to.
But the fence is
You look
cheaper
at
in the
that.
back, I think, than the monuments. You have to decide. Yeah,
Right. And we'll probably want to keep the kids out of the taller grass.
yeah, which they should
Otherwise,
anyway, because,
right.
yeah,
Ticks
otherwise you have
and
to
other
spray them
things.
all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
The kids?
the bugs.
You want it back?
No.
You guys are a great team.
Really glad it's a short night.
Okay, so let me,
I know you're rolling, that's the problem.
should I wait?
That's okay.
No, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so I think that was the big theme of Steve's memo. We don't have any issue with anything here. Additional understory, smaller trees and shrubs in the restored area. We're going to eliminate the boulders as the demarcation, go with the split rail fence. I think that's a good idea. Increase the size of some of the trees and look at a different species than the hemlock trees. We will add screening adjacent to the pool equipment area. That was, we should have done that.
Where's that? Where's the,
It's right next to the,
Top north part.
Yeah, it's a big.
yeah, it's a rectangular
north
area
of the
just
pool.
north of the pool.
Right
oh, up
there
here,
at the-
up
Right
there.
there.
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll put some shrubs there. Missed
Yep.
that. I
Yep.
usually do that. And I think everything else was good.
Be sure you have very tight quarters here, so be sure that the pool equipment meets all the sound requirements that we have in town.
Okay,
So I know you're well within, you're outside 20 feet, but
right.
it's,
It's a decibel requirement?
yes.
Okay.
Being how close that is to the property line there, would it be more acceptable to have it on the lower side if we're able to extend more towards the fence?
I think it would be because you get
And
it
then
away
for-
from your neighbor.
Right, so if we can move that to the other side, that'd be, we'll
Yeah,
screen
I
all
think it would
four
be better.
sides. Okay, so we'll move that.
Now, when you say to the other side, where? Just to the south side of the pool? or-
To the,
East side,
East side, okay.
well,
or
could,
do you mean
east
south?
or south?
East or south?
Basically, anything to get it further
South
from
is
the,
probably best, right?
South
That's
would
what I'm
be the
thinking, and that-
middle, Yeah.
in that corner there would be probably best for everyone. There's no,
Mhm.
a good buffer between the other house.
Does it impact your client adversely there? Well, that's the same on the north
You're
side.
talking about over here?
Yeah, I'm talking about down in that corner. No, I think that everyone would be happy to have it down there.
Okay.
We'll keep it
here?
right in the,
Closer to the pool.
think-
Oh,
Down
closer
there's
to the
great,
pool.
Okay.
yeah. No, down in the
Should be
corner,
closer.
where you were pointing, yes.
All those problems, obviously.
I think it should be closer to the
Yeah, it seems
pool.
like a long run.
That's not terribly far. It's more elevation is the issue than the length of the
Okay.
run.
And we don't have neighbors or here to worry about?
Correct. There's the roadway to the tennis court, nothing in the back.
So we just have to do some buffering then with vegetation for sight.
Why-
Okay.
Why
Okay.
couldn't they put it near the generator? You got a flat area there with equipment and might
Where's the
just make
generator?
sense to have all your mechanical stuff put together
Where's the generator?
right up here on
Can't see where you're pointing. Conversation.
Whereabouts? Tell me. Right there, okay, whoa,
Gotta bring it to the
bingo.
house.
Behind the garage.
I think we burned his finger.
just because there's a pad there already and it might make sense to put all
Sure.
the equipment there.
I agree, and it's,
Might be easier to maintain,
Yeah, I'll have to take a look. Yeah, there's a couple noise issues with the homeowner, plus the venting for the heater itself. I don't know if might have missed that generator. We need better venting for the gas heater.
What's the source of the gas?
Yeah, it'll be propane.
I just have one other comment with the irregular line, is watching lawn care people. If you have a more continuous smooth line, they're gonna maintain it a lot easier. And I think it's just gonna create a lot of problems for the homeowner with, maintaining an irregular line. I tend to think it would be better to have a smooth.
Yeah, I think we can smooth that out. We'll smooth that out. That's a good idea. So is the board okay with either location with the equipment? Either,
I'm okay with it.
okay. Okay, so we'll look at both.
Mhm.
Okay, next up is Sabrina's comment memo. The important ones are probably her number 3. No, we talked about number 3. That was important, but that's resolved. Okay, number 4, I had that highlighted, but we kind of spoke about the rain guarding being in the kind of the restored area because it's consistent with kind of the vegetation back there. Yeah, number 5 is the important one. Had a bit of a misfire, I guess you could call it, on the coverage. We thought we were okay with the coverage, and then found out we're not. So we're slightly over with the plan that we submitted to the board. But the good news is, I think, that with minor modifications, actually very minor modifications to the plan, we can get to the point where we don't need a coverage variance. It was a couple hundred square feet over. And I think what we proposed,
What's your,
500.
505.8 square
You're gonna be able to
Right.
eliminate other areas to keep it under 505?
yeah, we already looked at it, and starting, I mean, we included the proposed boulders along the demarcation line, so now we can remove those. We included,
part coverage?
So ultimately, I was on the phone with Chris today. They were concerned because they were 505.8 square feet over the coverage. And this is the coverage allowed per the zoning code. It wasn't a specific coverage allowed by this board. So they would have to go to zoning for the variance. We had examined more closely Troy's calculations, and he included things such as the boulder demarcations, which in the past we've included in coverage, but since they're changing it to a split rail fence, they can subtract that. And looking more closely at the existing impervious surface, what they're proposing as their new impervious surface, they feel that they can reduce the coverage where it makes sense. For example, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's boulder stepping stones, there's patio area, there's other steps and whatnot that they can alter to reduce the coverage by the 505.8 square feet. That's at
Right.
least what was said today.
So, Jennifer, would it be possible for us, if we were going to, so inclined, to put that as a condition that it has to meet, well, I guess it's just a normal condition, right?
Right.
That they can't exceed the zoning.
Right, I mean, I would think that you'd want to see the plan, the modifications, to see where they're reducing the coverage. But yeah, the resolution could either be subject to receiving a variance from the zoning board or providing a
Demonstrate.
code-compliant plan.
What I'd recommend too, just to keep everyone on the same page, once they're done, prior to their CO, have them get a good survey certified by an engineer or an architect or a surveyor, showing all those areas, because as you know, sometimes what they build exceeds
Sure.
what they,
Yeah, and that would be a requirement.
it's complete all requirements of the resolution.
And I agree with that, and I would add that on the plat somewhere, we have to say that, in accordance with the zoning.
Yep.
In bulk of
So we cover all the
the
bases.
Yep,
year
we
and
reference the
XYZ, D,
specific-
that they're done with
Do you, just
coverage.
point of information, do you not have to provide such a survey for applications like
That's
this?
correct. I mean, majority of the times, they get everything up front for the BP, but when everything's built, we generally don't get coverage calculations to be checked by an engineer and architect to certify to it.
You mean as-built survey?
Correct.
As opposed to a design proposal?
Right, well, we can request an as-built,
We will request an
and
as-built.
also an as-built certification of all of the coverage calcs, so they'll redo it and call it an as-built coverage calc, just to make certain that they meet
Right,
what they
got
said
it.
they would, intended to do.
Yeah, in the past, the coverage calculations have not been verified. Only an as-built to show that the setbacks have been, are being met and that the building as was permitted.
Sorry, so the existing coverage calculations are supported by a survey which shows all of those areas, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
In the application?
Yes,
Okay. That's what
which
I
is
thought.
how we know what we
That's
can
what I thought.
subtract from and not.
But
Got
we'll
it.
go one step further and get the as-built when they're done.
Right.
Right.
So all of those rocks that you're counting or are being counted?
Yes.
I know you probably don't want to count them, but I'm surprised if we count them, but
I
if we
do.
do, we do. All those rocks have to be sized on the survey, so you actually know what the coverage is?
Yeah, in this case, it will be removing most of the
I
boulders.
think split rail fence makes much more sense
Yeah,
anyway.
it kind of looks nice too.
Looks
I
nicer,
think it's
yeah.
They
attractive.
used that out in Sutton Farms, Stephen, remember Sutton Farms? That worked out quite well to delineate all the wetlands. We don't have any problems
No,
with
that's
people
great.
going into the wetlands out there.
Has nothing to really do with this application, but I'm intrigued by this, that we don't get these kinds of measurements afterwards.
We've
So-
become
That'd be-
smarter.
We do, if it's very, very close, and we've done it where it goes to the zoning board, and I've worked
Yeah,
with Bill on
if
this.
it's close, right.
If it's
Well-
very, very tight, we do have them submit
Well, it seems to me,
as-bills.
based on the history that we've had over the past month or two, and when we're dealing with environmental issues and permits, it might not be a bad idea to see this every single time we have an environmental permit, because it seems to me that we have a high percentage of mistakes and, overages.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
is,
I think
it is a
75% of the
recent,
applications over the past couple of months have been these corrections and errors or included.
correct, because our records and what we have in the files, when houses were constructed when these houses were constructed, did not verify either in resolutions or on the plans the coverage calculation.
Right.
And oftentimes, we're hunting around in files to find that one coverage sheet. So we've gotten a lot smarter in these newer applications that you've been seeing for the past couple of years, where in the resolution, we include the status of the coverage. We don't just say an allowance of 110% of the approved coverage per section 60-420F. What we say is the actual square footage, and we include the formula in the resolution. We put it in the approved site plan for each of the lots, and then we ask for the as-built as part of receipt of a C of O.
But you do get the as-built afterwards.
Yeah, we,
late?
yes, as of
On
late,
virtually
knowing
everything?
that you have
Oh,
been
okay.
experiencing this.
Yes, okay, that makes sense,
We
fine.
do.
Yeah, so this is a reaction to our current influx.
Especially the planning board applications, we're very cognizant of that.
So the coverage is covered in the as-built.
Correct.
That's right.
Very good, yes.
So we'll add a note to the plans requiring the as-built and the certification of the coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Okay,
All right.
we ready for hiccup number 2?
Bring it on.
Okay. General comment, other comment number 7. Oversight on my part. We focused so much on the side yard setback and achieving that with the 20.2 foot offset from the property, but ignored the combined side yard setback of 50 feet. So the existing house is a non-conforming house. It's, I think, 27 feet on the south side property and 19.9 on the north side. So existing is less than the 50-foot combined side yard requirement. So I think what we discussed, Chris, is that I don't see a way to avoid a variance for that.
No, there is
I
no way.
just don't.
It's an existing condition. It's built.
It's less,
You're not moving the house.
right, it's
No.
less non-conforming, but it's still
So it's
non-conforming.
what, less than 3
Correct.
feet, right? It's 2.73
Yeah,
feet?
yeah, yes, it's 2.73 feet, and it's a matter of formalizing this nonconformity, making sure that there's no issues moving forward. So a trip to the zoning board should go relatively smoothly if the planning board is in agreement that this application is worth
But our thought, our thinking was, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to suggest to remove the second-story addition, which really is, it's part of this project, but it's not part of this project as far as the pool and the rear yard components. It's really kind of its own separate thing. So we were going to suggest, if the board's okay, that we remove the second-story addition from this application.
Because that would have just increased more area, that would have been within a 2.73 foot.
Correct. It wouldn't
non-conforming.
get any
isn't-
closer or reduce it.
Isn't the existing house, it's pre-existing non-conforming?
But it's not legal nonconforming. So you have to go to the zoning board. Even if you were to walk away from this project altogether, you would still have
Correct.
to go to the zoning board to legalize what's there now.
Right, the issue is not your second-story addition.
Right.
The issue
A
right now
CO
is
for this house
existing.
never should have been issued
Correct.
because of this nonconformity.
And so even if they don't make that part of this application, they would still have to do that in order to process this application to make it legal.
I have
Have-
no
right.
idea.
Have-
To sell the house, they
Have
They
we
have to-
checked
right.
that this
Yeah,
Well, I
to
know
sell the
that, but-
house,
Yes.
I mean,
It's
they
built
have
like
to
this and
go
got a
Yes.
CO?
situation
Got a CO.
that's
I mean, it's not even an
existing now.
addition,
I
it's
don't
the
understand
original
how it got a
house.
CO.
Application that's been
What's
submitted.
I know that, but.
What was the
but
year
is-
that this house
I mean,
was
this
structured,
application-
gentlemen? Do you know?
The 80s,
They have to
probably
take
The
86.
care of that
80s. This
before
is
they
not
go ahead with the pool
unusual,
application.
folks.
Oh, I remember the 80s.
Just do it on a separate track.
Well,
Because I think
Yeah,
their
and
concern
so-
is moving ahead
so
with
here's
this.
the-
That's gonna be up to staff. I think it could be handled separately, but
Did you
it's
check?
a matter of housekeeping to make sure that it gets done.
Oh, make sure it gets
Did
done,
you
yeah.
check the
I
surveys
understand
that were
that. I
obtained
just
when
think
they
that
got the
Issue a new
CO,
building
check it
permit
against that.
until.
That's what I would
they might be
recommend.
concerned about having to go through
They do.
Yes, so we did some
ZBA
research
for
into
that,
this.
and it might hold up
This
this
is a
application. That's all I'm saying.
pre-existing non-conformity. It does not meet the side yard setback, non-legal. And so, we went back and forth before the full-time building inspector left Newcastle regarding this. And the most protective measure of all parties would be to go to seek the variance from the zoning board. You know, it's roughly a meeting or two with the zoning board. They meet once a month. It's something that needs to be resolved to make this lot conforming.
Are we able to split the pool and the patio and everything from because I'm not even sure the timing of them installing the addition, they wanted to do it all.
You can always get separate permits.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can apply, you can get approval from this board for the pool and you know, everything that we're talking about before this board. Simultaneously, you can seek relief from the ZBA for your setbacks. It won't stop one or the other, but it will be conditioned that before C of O is issued, you will have received your variance. You know, that's part of your, you know, the work that you need to do to achieve C of O.
So we can get the building permit for the pool.
Yes,
You have a separate
and then
permit.
get
We
the
could do
variance
that.
for the addition.
That's
and everything
correct,
separate.
correct.
But you should, thank you. You should,
Still need the variance regardless,
Yeah,
Well, for the house in general.
regardless.
yes. Well, no,
I
you,
don't know, could
Not
they
for
tie
planning
one
board
into the other,
approval.
Jennifer?
not the planning board
Not for
approval.
planning board. That's why I said if you, literally, if you walked away from this entire application altogether, you'd still be going to the zoning board to correct what is currently
Correct.
on the property.
but we
The
can,
question
we can
is-
wrap up our stuff.
But yes, you can,
They can do that without,
separate it.
they can separate
You
it.
can get your building permit for the pool and the patio, move
Before
forward
you
with
get-
that
right.
simultaneously.
Right,
with
but
going
you
to the
will
zoning
not
board.
receive your C of O for the pool and the patio
Right.
until you receive the variance from the zoning board for the
There needs to be
existing
some
nonconformity.
backstop there.
Can they get a signed off site plan from the planning board without getting the variance from the zoning board?
Can we condition it that they make application for the variance as part of the sign off on the site plan?
So that prior to an issuance of a CO.
Correct,
Right.
yeah.
And as
Yeah.
far as the variance goes, I mean, there's really nothing.
It should not be a problem. I mean, I'm not the ZBA, but I don't foresee an issue. It's an existing situation. It's not
Chop
like
off-
you're building a
chop
new
off
house.
10
Would
feet of
be
the house
to
on the north
demolish
side.
a section of
No,
the
no,
house,
what
which
you do
is
is you go to the homeowners
that's-
association.
I've
and
never
ask
seen
for
that
5
done.
feet of their easement.
I-
Oh,
but-
no,
but
why don't you
that-
go to the zoning board
Yeah, that's a
instead?
great idea. I appreciate the input.
Oh, Janice said
Okay,
it
so
shows the
So
same
I have a-
dimensions. I don't know.
Yes, no, it does. We reviewed
I
it.
don't know what the building inspector
Yeah,
was
it
thinking
shows
of.
the same thing.
I have
Answer that
We
question.
can't look back.
All right, but the,
That magic ball is broken.
but please
That's so
consider when
magic
you go
anymore.
forward, the zoning board meets once a month.
Right.
Not twice a month. So that means you miss something, then you're gonna throw things out of whack relative to doing the other stuff for the summer.
I actually have a procedural question about that, because if you, excuse me, if you're submitting a building, a permit application, and it requires a ZBA review, you need to have the documents in, ZBA requires their documents in 1 month before their meeting. That's 4 weeks right there. And then the building department requires those drawings for the building permit application 2 weeks before that at a minimum. So you're already 6 weeks out to get to a ZBA meeting if you can get on their calendar for that, the period you're looking for. So the question I have is, could this ZBA application to fix this non-conforming, illegal non-conforming thing, what kind of documents does it require? Does it actually require does it require going through the building department first and the 2 weeks there in order to get to?
Yeah, can the
Because
planning
they're not
board
really
make a
submitting
referral? I
for
mean,
building, they're not submitting for a building permit, they're just trying to just tie up.
Fix an
uh,
existing
fix an existing
non-conforming.
thing.
I don't know if I can answer that question. I think we'd have to talk to the building
No,
department.
but generally what happens?
Yeah, I mean,
the-
what's your
What
normal
happens if the
practice?
building inspector got this
Zoning
plan
board.
just for the addition? He would review it.
Correct.
And he would say, it's non-compliant. He stamps it denied. With those grounds, then it gets set and application gets made to the zoning board.
Yes,
Correct.
but
It's a
it, but,
procedure.
no, understood, but it requires 2 weeks before, the month before.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's,
correct.
I'm just trying to
There's a
find
lot of
out.
time involved.
Does this, let me just finish this so that I'm,
Yep.
does an application to the ZBA, not to the building department, to the ZBA to resolve this non-conforming use require going to the building department? Or is it a direct application, just the ZBA?
It depends. There's two, at least under the state statutes, there's two ways to get to the zoning board. One is through a denial letter from the building department, where you submit the building permit application, it gets denied, and then you
Right.
appeal that to
Right.
to the zoning board. The second way is through a planning process where you get referred to the zoning board.
But can't they just walk in and say,
No.
I have a non-conforming?
No.
No.
Well, then I get asked, you,
It's a legal question. It's not an application. Nobody's
And the
applying
legal
for
answer
anything.
is no. That
But
is
can I-
not
but can
Listen,
I just-
cumbersome.
legally
I mean, it's
permitted
why.
way to
Well,
get
wait,
to the
Tom,
zoning
Wait, wait,
Tom, please, just, calm down, because
No,
if-
I will not.
here's the way it works. Here's the way it works. If you understand it and it's logical, then it isn't gonna work.
But a serious question, you had said if the applicant decides to walk away and not do the pool and not do the addition, they have to clean this up anyway. So if they're not doing a pool and addition, they have nothing to submit to the building department and nothing to submit to the planning board. How do they go and get this cleaned up?
Because the building department issues them some kind of document saying you have a pre-existing non-conformity
Now that we
you
know,
need
because we've been
to
sitting and reviewing this
rectify.
application,
So
if they
does-
are to withdraw, you would be given a violation.
They have to still go through the building.
Apparently, the ZBA cannot review anything unless it's been through either planning or building
Under
department.
state statutes, that is
Aha,
correct.
Okay.
So
You have to go through one
Like
of
much
those.
easier
anyway.
One or the other.
Okay, we tried.
It's okay, would the planning board
I think
be in a
we-
position to refer us to the ZBA to skip this 2 weeks?
I don't think it's gonna be a problem either
Okay.
way.
Well, the
I think we
two,
might be getting bogged down in some of the
I'm just trying to
details
save them
that-
2 weeks, that's all.
Right,
I mean, I don't think they're gonna have a problem getting their approval. I'm just saying, trying to save the 2 weeks.
right, and I think we also talked about the fact that we can do it with two permits, so that the
Bifurcated at
pool
this
can
point.
move forward without having to wait the 2 weeks and then wait to get on a zoning board agenda. They just have to wait to get their CO for the pool until the variance stuff is worked out.
I mean, I actually have a personal thing on this because I'm gonna do an addition, and I found out today that I gotta do the 2 weeks before the 4 weeks, and I'm wondering, why did the zoning board take 4 weeks?
I would also like
Why
to
did they
make you
take 4
aware,
weeks?
this application has already been reviewed by the town's building inspector. Even though that building inspector is no longer employed with the town, I have been in contact with the building inspector about this particular application. So it's not a new application that they have not seen before from a building permit
So to
perspective.
Tom's point, can the planning board send a note to the ZBA saying, we like these guys, we think this is okay, and
We approve of
we approve
this,
this,
we notice
we
this,
support the
yes.
application? And will that eliminate the next 2 weeks, because that's the referral that's going to the zoning board through planning?
As Sabrina just mentioned, I don't know that 2 weeks is really applicable here because
Okay.
the building department has already reviewed everything. So it's not like they're walking in cold
Right.
without, you know.
Yeah, folks, I want to make you aware, I do these numbers when it comes to setbacks, but I am not the zoning enforcement official.
No, we
I
understand.
always check with the building inspector before it is documented to your board so that we are talking about real numbers here.
Right, we understand, thank you. Good. Okay. So that's a big hiccup, sort of a big hiccup, but,
Not really.
yeah.
No, not
Procedural.
really.
It's
I
just
mean, that's-
procedural
Hurdle,
issues.
you can jump over it.
But I think it worked out okay,
It's
though.
just standard procedure.
Yeah,
But we can send a memo, which
okay, no, we
may or
appreciate
may
that.
not do anything.
Besides that, the rest of Sabrina's memo was good.
You mean the other
Okay.
part was bad? How does that work?
I didn't realize we're literary reviewing these, you know? It's like,
You gonna give her a grade?
So I think that's all we have. Chris,
Hey,
did
of
you have anything?
course.
Of course.
The biggest thing was to be able to move forward with the pool, understanding that we have to,
Yes, that's okay. We
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
okay. Are we okay then with the big issue, I think, for us is the clearing and grading limit line?
Yep.
Yep.
And we're okay with that, right? With all the stuff that we've talked about, working out some sort of moderated proposal?
And we would need a declaration for council to review in relation to the project, in relation to the change. The planting plan would need to be, the final planting plan would need to be revised, and we would need a new coverage analysis based on what you're removing.
Right, and we have a coverage plan as the last sheet in the set, so it's part of the set itself, so.
And Bob, you're okay with this stormwater pollution plan?
Yeah, until we get the deeps and the perks.
Right.
We don't know really where we're
Get those
going.
scheduled now that the snow's gone.
Yeah, and to confirm, the fence is not gonna follow the green line in totality, but it's gonna fade off at the sidelines?
Yes, and I
Okay.
think also the lines are gonna be more gentle, more curved as
Correct,
Steve,
and you're gonna show that on your final
advised.
submission?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
You count the fence posts as coverage also.
Make the,
make them very narrow at
It's
the
gonna put us
bottom.
over, I can't do that.
make the top come to a
Yeah, that's what-
They're gonna
any-
be trees,
yeah.
live trees as fence posts.
Troy, you also have to have a fence for the pool, so you may want to look at the combination,
Yeah, that's
you
not
know,
a bad idea.
might make sense.
Bring it on into that house.
Okay.
But at the same token, since you're going for the 2.73, if you have to go to the ZBA and don't kill yourselves, it seems to me, don't kill yourselves over a couple of square feet and ruin your design. I mean, you're going there anyway.
For your addition.
Oh,
It
Yeah, I
was,
understand,
it
but
was
it's
but
just-
it's
minimal.
kind of causes a jog in the house.
Right.
so. Okay, no,
All right,
appreciate that.
any other comments, questions?
Nope.
Any comments from the public on this application? You can hear the echo. Not seeing any, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is a type 2, right?
Yes.
Do we want to schedule a public hearing and direct staff to set
You
up?
are in public hearing.
We just closed it.
Oh, okay, we closed it.
So drafting resolution is the next step.
Yeah, we have to write a resolution with all the changes.
Yes. So is that your motion?
Yes.
And it's important that we have revised plans to reference in the resolution, so I know I spoke with Chris about deadlines associated with that, so that we can make sure that we have the right information put into the resolution for your review.
Good. And we can add that to the resolution.
And add that to your motion?
Yes, to the motion.
Okay. Second to the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Janice, when can we schedule them? How soon will it take for staff to put this together?
What was the date? April 7th. Did we talk about, we talked about April 17th and making sure that they submit by that Friday.
If you guys can do it, that's fine,
Yeah.
sure.
This Friday.
So we'll see you next time around.
Are you able to do it by this Friday?
How are you gonna get the deeps and perks done? Did you contact Terry? Not that it may, but right now, I don't have no idea how big that system's gonna be. And I told you last time to do it, did you contact Terry and get the deeps and perks? That's the whole basis for the whole design for the stormwater, and I have nothing. Well, I can't go by
It
that.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I can't use next door. It's gotta be based on where the infiltrators are.
Yeah, and how
So-
much fill did they put on that property from someplace else? Oh, there's no fill. Oh, then they took fill off? I mean, it's
I
different.
mean, I would never recommend putting those conditions in a resolution, because this is the first time, I'm not gonna approve anything before deeps and perks are done.
Well, then I think you have to I agree with that.
I'm not gonna approve anything.
So-
And, I don't want these to be put in a resolution. I've never done it in the past.
So then that blows your Friday date out of the water, but you can't get the perks and
Yes.
deeps done witnessed by Friday.
What's that?
Can Terry do it today, this week? We can try.
Do it for Friday.
But what I want to say is whether or not you can accomplish what you need to accomplish by Friday, there's nothing stopping you from determining what you want as far as the setback and getting that variance application moving, in a sense, so that you're not caught up because of this application for the variance.
It sounds to me, worst case, we'll see you on May 1st, if not April 17th.
Correct.
But, we leave that to you and, without overly burdening the staff on, emergency perk tests when it's been out there for a while. It's not the first time it's been in your comments.
Excuse me?
It's not the first time it's been in your comments.
It was in my comment
Right.
last time.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So we'll wait to hear from you and see what you can do. Okay? Okay, thanks. Okay, we have a request for an extension. This is for the Newcastle Fire District Number 1. And this is an application for a site development plan, tree removal permit, and stormwater pollution prevention plan approval, 491 and 495 King Street, New York Route 120 and Elm Street. So we have a letter from the applicant's representative indicating that they're trying to move forward. They are moving forward, but they require further extensions at this time. Any issues or problems from legal or staff on the request?
No, I have none.
Does anyone have any problem or issue?
No.
If not, is there a motion to grant the extensions sought?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our next matter is, again, a continuing discussion on the referral from the town board. And Steve, on the changes in the tree preservation rule. I think, unfortunately, Sheila's not here this evening. I had a long conversation with Sheila after our last meeting before the final version of the memo went out to the town board. And she remained concerned with a number of issues there. And I was concerned that that Tom's opinion on the land, the tree bank was also not being articulated or at least counted in the memo. And I think there were some other issues that had come up, and again, we had seen it on very short notice, so I thought it might be better. And it's an important document that we take a little bit more time on it, discuss it more thoroughly, make sure that we're all set on this, and then either send a different memo or a supplemental memo, or just leave it as is.
I think there's some things that need clarification.
Mm-hmm. I think, again, she's not here, but Sheila was concerned with some of the issues that dealt with individual homeowners and having to get approvals and delays in getting approvals when there were emergency situations or dangerous situations at homes with trees leaning on houses, about to fall on houses. And she thought that it was just a little bit too arduous. And what we had set up was unrealistic, and she really felt it was just drilling down a little bit too far, and she thought it was just too much regulation, in short. So I'm trying to represent as best as I can our conversation. Jennifer, did she have a conversation with you on this also? She never did. Okay. Sabrina, did she talk to you about it?
No,
Okay.
she did not.
Okay, I thought she was going to try to talk to either one of you.
No.
But anyway, that was one of her concerns, and I've gone through it again. I had a couple more questions and for clarification as well. But in any event, there we are. I think we had some questions about again, some of the changes that are proposed. Some of the scope, I think, going down as low as a 4-inch tree was, from my standpoint, was really getting down pretty low. Reducing specimens from 24 to 18. I didn't think it was necessarily bad or good or anything else. I just thought it was unrealistic because I just think people will not know about that unless, as I talked about last time, anyone who's doing this kind of work is going to be licensed and bonded by the town, and therefore required to understand what the rules and regulations are in this town. If we don't have that, I think so much of this stuff is just, frankly, just a waste of time. I love the stuff about the shrubs. I think that's fantastic. We've talked about that for a couple of years, and I think that's what you guys have done on that with ERB and CB is terrific. That's a
Bob,
great addition.
just for clarification, the 4-inch diameter, that's not recommended to be changed. That was amended previously. That's been in the current ordinance since 2000.
So it is now 4 inches.
Yeah. And that's only in the regulated landscape buffer area. Outside of that zone, the tree has to be 8 inches in diameter.
But just on the caliper, I have a question. On, I guess it's the top of page 2, but I guess it's section 1215A 5 and 6. When we talk about top of the page, involving the removal of 10 or more trees, is there a caliper that's associated with that?
It depends on the location, because we have two different criteria. There's a regulated landscape buffer, and that within that zone a tree is defined as 4 inches in diameter.
So if you have just
And
a
if it's
normal-
outside of that zone, then it's 8 inches in diameter before it's considered regulated.
Oh, okay, so if I have just like normal woods, and I've got a
Right.
bunch of Norway saplings that are
Right,
2
they-
to 3 inches, and I wanna take down a dozen of
Yeah.
those, this says I don't need to do that.
Because if you look at, on page 3, under definitions, it gives you the regulated landscape buffer
Right.
zone. And those are the distances based on the zoning district.
How does that work, Steve? I'm reading that, and I have read that,
Well, for example, let's just take a 1 acre,
right?
from the property line in, it's the
15 feet.
15 feet.
So-
So anything within that 15-foot strip around the entire property is considered the regulated landscape
Right.
buffer. And so a tree within that zone, anything that's 4 inches in diameter or larger would be subject to permitting. And then once you get past the 15 feet, then the definition is 8 inches in diameter.
Aha, okay.
So, can I have a little clarification on that? 15 foot, a 15-foot perimeter essentially around,
For the 1 acre district. Yeah.
in a 1 acre district.
Mhm.
And what about a 2 acre district?
There are 2
25
acres,
feet.
25 feet.
Okay, so it's proportional to the size
Right,
of the lot.
and, and that's what we attempted to do last time when we
Right.
amended it.
Okay.
It goes from 5 feet for a quarter acre to,
Yeah, does 5 feet
5
really get you
for a quarter
anything?
acre, it,
What can you do in 5 feet? I mean,
yeah, well, it's actually, for a quarter acre zone, 5 feet is considerable when it comes to a buffer area.
but what can you plant in it? I mean,
Well, you can plant trees and, they will extend onto,
Well, especially now with shrubs, too.
But you can do shrubs.
yeah, I
and
like
per-
I
and perennials
agree
and
about the
grasses.
shrubs. I mean,
I think it's terrific.
understory is important too, so.
Now, on another definition, is there a difference between a canopy line and a tree line? We talk about the canopy line, is that,
Is that the drip line?
No, canopy, well, they're kind of one and the same. Canopy refers to the overstory, that's the large,
that you're
shade cover
within-
that.
and you're within the canopy?
And it's referred usually to a deciduous tree, not an evergreen, is how they usually look at overstory trees. So that's the overall branching, of an existing tree creates the canopy.
So
When
on
a
this,
tree matures, that's the canopy.
on page 10, item F, where we talk about the replacing 100% of the canopy,
Yeah.
if you're replacing 100% of the canopy, are you replacing 100% of the tree line, or is that a different
Well,
thing?
the.
'Cause I'm
plant-
thinking tree line,
yeah.
when you're outside the property looking in, and somebody comes in and cuts, they take a chop out of that tree line.
Mhm.
And by replacing the canopy, are we replacing that tree line?
It's a little bit different because of the, you're working on different perspectives. I mean, if you're looking aerial versus, on the ground,
Right.
so it's a little bit different. I mean, the canopy is the same as a tree line in general. But what you show on a plan scale is on a ground layer that'll pick up the canopy sometimes, or it may just pick up the tree and the canopy may extend over, further. So it depends on how it's presented.
And would we want to try to broaden this to replace the tree
Well,
line and the
Yeah,
canopy line?
your memo had recommended 100%, and based on, most of the research, I looked actually today, to the U.S. Forest Service has done a lot of research on, tree canopy, and they looked back in the 90s and, early 2000s to try to create a standard, and they came out with a recommendation that 40 to 60% for overstory canopy trees is a worthwhile ideal. Because there's so many variables in terms of being able to actually, if you had 100% canopy, you'd have complete shade. And that's just not realistic with any given residential use. You're not gonna have 100%, and, depending on, the circumstances, residentially have a better opportunity to get a higher percentage than a commercial district, for example, but you're never gonna get 100% coverage of.
Well, do
I
you
thought,
even want to
wait,
get
I-
100%?
But I'd wait, can I just terms, forgive me,
Sure,
for
yeah,
terms?
please.
We're not talking about 100% coverage of the lot, we're talking about 100% replacement. So you're not gonna end up with shade for the whole property, you're just, we're not talking,
That's not how I read your comment on that section. I mean, what we're recommending for tree replacement is to have, up to 75% of the replacement be overstory or canopy trees. You know, so the idea is you're
But do you,
replacing 75%.
no, I understand that.
Yeah.
But the assumption that, under the case you just stated, would be that we're talking about a lot which is completely covered.
Mhm.
And to require 100% replacement of that would be, you couldn't develop the property.
Right.
So that case, in that case, it wouldn't work, so the 100% standard is not a realistic one. I'm not even sure 75% is a realistic one, because it depends on the size of the lot.
I mean, the more I think about it, I think we may be better off with a 50%, recommendation, because, just 75 does seem probably not practical.
So could it be 50% minimum
At minimum,
at the
sure.
discretion of,
You can put it.
with the
put
planning board,
language
because it's in
sure.
our,
Yeah,
Sure.
I like that. And the other point too, that I think you have to try and capture the fact that these are where canopy trees are taken down, we want to try to get 50% replacement of them on site.
Right.
That's the way I would word it.
Mhm.
A minimum of 50% on site would be
Yeah.
the goal.
That would be the goal. Well, that's the requirement.
requirement.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of, what I try to do with changing this and putting those standards in is to look at trying to create more of a sustainable buffer. So having the overstory trees, understory trees, which are your smaller, trees, and then also the ability to add a shrub layer. So I mean, that's the real motive behind it, is to really encourage people to create a more sustainable buffer on their
With those
properties.
layers.
With those layers.
So,
And I mean, it means they don't have to, but I mean, if we put it in as guidelines, at least we can encourage a homeowner or an applicant to, make sure they consider that as part of their, planning for tree replacement.
I just have one question on this. I mean, I'm not the tree expert, but how are you gonna quantify the canopy area?
You have to, I mean, it's gonna have to be, based on your best educated guess. I mean, we're not gonna require surveying or anything like that.
would you do it based on just the DBH of the tree and the species, and
Yeah,
just say,
I
well,
mean,
we know that?
the advantage is, when we broke it down to have 18-inch, the idea was, that anything over 18-inch requires the 50%, replacement. So that kind of implies more that those are canopy trees. So if we're taking out canopy trees, then that's where we would start to make sure that, there's a percentage of canopy trees put back as part of the replacement.
One of the questions I had on this is, we still don't make any delineation between so-called invasive species. And, we had that once on one application, which I think is still pending. They never finalized it. But I think, Steve, in that particular one, there was a lot of invasive, I think it was Norway maples. And I think there, we felt that even though it was invasive species, you still counted them as trees. They were still serving a purpose in terms of buffering, et cetera. And, but, in these, even these regulated zones, sometimes if we just permit these invasive trees to grow, they become really a problem, and they start to impact the so-called native species. And I don't see an escape clause in here where we can, let someone, homeowner, developer, mostly a homeowner, take care of that. So in particular, for example, Norway's, maples, they have very shallow roots, and they start taking all the moisture up, and other trees start to fall by the wayside, native species, sugar maples start to go, and walnuts go, and all the others start to go. So how do we get around that? I mean, it seems to be me that we really need to be doing cognizant of that. Because what happens is these 4-inch saplings tend to be the Norways, these crummy trees that are coming in.
I struggled with that to try to figure out a way to capture that, and part of the difficulty is, especially with Norway maples, which is the dominant tree that we have, throughout Chappaqua.
Yep.
Throughout the whole Northeast now, is that a lot of properties, when we look at it, the majority of trees coming down are Norway maples. And, if you allowed someone to take those down, in some cases you'd be clearing, their properties, because that's all they have. We did put in is a prohibition to not allow replanting, of Norway maples or any of the cultivars, because they're on the, New York State invasive, plant list. But when it comes to counting for replacement, what I've traditionally done is when we have an application where there's, several trees proposed to be removed and several are invasive or Norway maple, I often will not require replacement. But that's not really
It's not in the code, though, it's
more
just your own.
It's more just discretion that I use, to try to, compensate for the fact that they are invasive, and we would rather have them removed and not, tax the homeowner on replacing as much.
But do we have that kind of discretion under the code when something's before the planning board? You do out in the field, and you can, make deals, I guess, and figure out things and
I
work
guess
with the
the-
homeowner, but
I guess
for us,
the
what
tricky
do-
part is how to, my only concern is that, I would like to see, all of the invasive trees or that be removed, and not be factored in. My only concern is that because they're so prevalent, are we doing a disservice?
Right.
Even though they've replaced a habitat and a niche within the environment, and if we just wholesale remove all the Norway maples, are we creating more of
goes
an
the forest.
environmental impact?
Right.
And so that's what I struggled with it, and I purposely didn't put it in because I didn't know how to make it work where we could, realistically enforce it.
Yeah, but somehow, some way, it would be great to get back to native species and starting to put the
Right. It's
birches
just,
and the
yeah,
oaks back in,
Yeah, the other challenge though too is removal is easy, but preventing them from coming back
Oh, yeah.
is not so easy,
Well,
because
if they're coming in,
root
they're less than
system-
4 inches, then we can take care of them. But
Yeah.
once they hit 4 inches, we can't take care of them, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
And they really do create havoc. And especially, it seems to me, you see those in those 5 and 10-foot buffers. That's what you see
Well,
you seem to see in those.
because those areas are often very disturbed and,
Yeah.
and the homeowners don't maintain them.
Oh, yeah.
If you were to take
But
them
they're also
out
very
of that
dangerous. They're
neighborhood,
very-
There'd be nothing left.
Yeah, they're very brittle. They're the ones that really collapse in the snow and cause all kinds of problems, too.
If you have suggestions, certainly, it's something I've struggled with since we, for the past, 10 years really, and, we've seen just a dramatic spread of,
Yeah.
invasive, plants in general, but, Norways are here, a predominant aspect of the landscape, and, they've been well established for, 50, 60 to 80 years already, so, and, for example, Taylor Road, if you're familiar with Taylor Road, years ago when they did that subdivision, they planted an alley on both sides of the road of Norway maples. Now they're about 80 years old, and, 3/4 of them we've had to take out because of, structural defects and safety. And,
Well, any tree that gets to be 80 years old is
Yeah.
gonna,
yeah, but a sugar maple can last twice that,
well, and not any tree, but 80 years is
It
pretty
depends on
respectable.
conditions and
Right.
a lot of factors, but, yeah.
Right. But it's
without
not
those
the age
Norway
of the tree
maples there,
necessarily,
yeah.
it's the consequences of them there while they're healthy, which is
Right,
what Bob's
right.
talking about.
And that's the problem with like Norway maples is because they create what's called allopathy, where they prevent anything from growing
Right.
within their drip line. And so,
Suck up the moisture,
and that's
shallow
why they
roots.
spread so well.
You know
is
what does
because-
work is, I found is Pachysandra works real well.
Yeah, because that can handle very little moisture. Because
Yeah.
the roots of the Norway maple just suck the water out of
And
the
it
ground.
does well, it also does well in the shade, so.
Yeah.
Pachysandра's got a very low canopy.
Yeah.
The only thing that comes up out of Pachysandra is poison ivy and that.
I get that, bunch of that too.
Yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
I think it's a very serious concern. I just don't know how to put it in the ordinance to address
Yeah,
it.
it's a tough
Other
one.
than maybe, I usually don't require replacement. Maybe we could add language that says if it's invasive, it may not be subject to replacement. But then at the same time, if they're taking
It performs a function.
5 trees out and that's all they have, and then they've got this big bare area, and if they're not responsible for putting anything back, is that fair to the next neighbor that?
So
doesn't-
are these just coming up at the canopy edge, or are they deep in the forest as
No,
well?
they started at the canopy edge, but because they've been around for so long, they're actually
They just take over.
prevalent throughout the whole forest.
Do they creep in, or do they,
Both, they spread by, the
Seed.
seed, spreads easily, and they have a competitive advantage because they germinate quicker than, native maples do.
And they can come up in the shade of
Yeah,
a
and
canopy.
they're much more shade tolerant than that.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Evil.
And the deer don't eat it as much as they do the natives either.
So I don't know what the answer is, but I think somehow there should be some sort of discretionary escape clause here for all of the approving authorities. I'm not sure what that is in terms of replacement, or in some cases not counting those as 4-inch or 8-inch trees, whatever they might be. But I remember very well, it was the one on Button Hook Road, which had just so many of those maples, that if you had permitted, if we had said, well, those aren't really trees, then the place would have been just, completely cleared, and that really didn't work. So I know we had that problem, and we're going to have it more and more.
Maybe we do this on a case-by-case basis. Maybe it's not something you can write into a code.
Well,
Maybe-
that's a
maybe
good
what-
idea. I mean, why not?
With discretion.
Maybe what we could do is, as part of the analysis, especially for planning board applications, is have them factor in what percentage of invasive tree
gives it-
species are present. And,
Okay.
come up with maybe a formula if it's more than 25% or,
Could that be put in here?
Yeah, I
I don't
mean-
know, that's a suggestion. Is we
Just to,
could try to
just
put
as
some-
part of the inventory?
Yeah, I was looking in section 121-6, we might be able to add something in there, another letter point,
Yeah.
just to say that where the tree removal includes invasive species as verified by the town certified arborists, there's discretion, the approval authority has discretion to lessen the tree replacement requirements. Maybe not to bring it down to 0, but to alter it.
Well, if it's discretion and it's less, then it's
Discretion
a
to do-
direction.
But I gotta
either
ask the
way.
question, what difference does it make if it's invasive or not? If there's a 24-inch invasive maple and a 24-inch sugar maple, and they both have to come down to build whatever you're doing, you're still taking down 48 inches of tree. So don't you still have to replace tree? So even if it's invasive, it's still a tree that's there, that's serving a function. Maybe it's not an ideal function, but it's still serving a function as a tree, and it's dealing with the environment and the animals and everything else. Don't you have to replace that?
You do, but I would suggest that if it's a invasive that's coming down, you don't, you would rather encourage replacement with non-invasive.
But you can't
that's
replace
required anyway.
invasive. I'm not suggesting that.
That's required anyway.
You have to do that. What I'm hearing is if it's invasive, well, maybe you don't have to put back
Discount.
that inches, or it's discounted, and I'm thinking it shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, you do
Definitely
raise a
don't,
good point,
yeah.
because,
What?
even though it's an invasive tree, it's still providing,
It's still a tree.
the evapotranspiration and all kinds of other benefits.
But
Like I have a
but
36-inch Norway maple on our property, which I value as the most valuable tree on the property.
Yeah, I've got several.
Because it casts a wonderful canopy over the backyard and makes this outdoor space that you could never pay for if you ever try to plant a tree. And when that tree dies, hopefully not in the next 30, 40 years, it's going to really be a bummer.
One thing that we might be able to deal with the discretion issue, because then, Button Hook is a good example where the school property was.
right.
Is what happens with Norway maples is they kind of clone, so because they create this allopathy, they create kind of a clone of a grove of their own species. So if we have that in a situation, there may be more ability to say, remove that, section, because that would probably have a better impact environmentally by, eliminating that whole.
I think that's my point. I think we see it more in those buffer areas rather than the large individual standing trees,
Yeah.
which again, I still think that would be considered a specimen tree just based on the size. My issue, I guess, is really in these areas that are regulated, these buffers, and when they're 5 and 10 feet. In this area, this is what you start to see, and you see a lot of these 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch saplings, and what happens is they will crowd out the invasive. So, yes, they're performing something, but long-term, they're performing actually some measure of disservice as well. And I think there's some way we should account for that.
Another thought, which gets more complicated on how to regulate, but is to actually suggest to the homeowner, give them credit to remove all those saplings.
Yes.
Well, okay. I think that's all good, and I think that instead of saying what we said before, but that if a invasive tree is being taken down for purposes of making the property more profitable or more amenable to housing, that there would be some discretion that would be available type of thing, not defining what it is, and then it becomes something that we work on over the course of years, or the arborist works on over a course of years to come up with, well, what do? You go out and you go and find an area in your wetland buffer which is full of red maple saplings. You take that out, and it, we consider that worth half of the tree. But we don't have to define how it works. We just have to say there
Yeah.
might, we could have some discretion.
So, yeah, it's hard to sit here tonight and figure out predict all the different conditions that.
But it's good to discuss them so
but-
we can
but-
see.
No, I understand. But so if we put the language in that gives us the discretion, then we can deal with these special conditions when they come up.
To any approving authority, whether it's the ZBA, us, or you.
Yeah,
Put an
Yeah.
umbrella catch-all.
good.
Dealing specifically with Sheila's concerns, I think this is in 121.4. I think B, for example, hazardous trees. What can we do here to permit, homeowners permit them to take immediate emergency action without having to come down to town hall or call you, Steve, and wait? Because presumably, in these kinds of situations, you have lots of these calls.
I have an idea.
Okay.
Photographic evidence.
I mean, what happens a lot of times, unfortunately, we've had several big storm events, but they've been good learning, situations too. And my experience is that most people, we pretty much give people the benefit of the doubt, when it comes to storm events, because of the, just the impact of the storm itself. And, but a lot of times I find people will call if they're concerned, and they will call and say, I have a tree that I think is dangerous, and then usually I end up spending more time going out and actually looking at it and say, yeah, go ahead, take it down.
Right.
Or they can explain enough specifics, and sometimes they send me email photos,
Well-
which is easy, that I can tell right away, that it should come down, or, but your idea maybe just, putting photographic
I think that's a good
evidence.
idea.
It would be a simpler way, but usually I find if I can ask enough questions of, someone, I can figure out pretty quickly whether it, it does present a real safety hazard, or it could wait.
Right.
Good.
The thought I had with that section B is that we could maybe get rid of the second part of it altogether, and then just put that at the end, it, may require verification, and maybe expand that to include photo documentation or
Well,
something.
yeah,
like that.
if you say may require documentation, I would just say requires photographic documentation.
Okay. So we can work with that language, Jennifer, and see what we come up with.
I know we always do this. We have standards for review. Here it is. And this is on page 11, 126-7, A sub 1. How is sub 1 ever something that is not inconsistent with the preamble, which is a terrific preamble into the legislation? It's never consistent with the purpose and findings because we're cutting the trees down.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of a,
I mean, do we
it-
need that, or we just go
Phase two,
straight into the
because
real,
it's,
real standards? Because, number one, if this is, by the way, how is this done? Are these conjunctive or disjunctive? I guess,
well, we had recommended combining 2 and 6, together. You had recommended
Right.
that previously, so that'll be modified. But it is interesting because we call it tree preservation, but the
Yeah.
ordinance is really tree removal.
yeah, exactly. So you're,
The end result is,
Replacement is
that's why we added the replacement, which we
Right.
never had previously.
if you read the legislative intent,
Yeah.
which goes through all these wonderful things why we want trees, and then you go right here, well, it can't be inconsistent with, like, of course it's inconsistent.
And this is how you chop them down.
Exactly. So it struck me as odd.
I have, back on page 10, item F, which requires, this is back to the canopy thing. I have words here if you want them, I give them to you afterwards, but it what I wrote was, at a minimum, let me say, wait a minute.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Page 10, item F, requires that at a minimum, 50% of canopy trees that are removed will be replaced with canopy-type trees. Which, in other words, or something that says, hey, we want that kind of tree, but it doesn't have to be 80 feet tall.
Native canopy
Okay.
trees.
Native, that's even better.
Well,
Before
we
you
could,
have it placed
I
on
mean,
the site.
it's based on, it's very easy to tell understory trees from canopy trees. I mean, there's certain species, so.
Yeah, I mean, you'll know that from the plan.
It's gonna be automatic that it's, canopy trees in most cases, like your oaks and maples and your ash and all your.
So I got
Yeah,
Greg's
our
words too, so,
canopy.
all right. Then I'm on page 12 then, I put something, unless somebody has something
Yeah, that's
earlier.
fine. Mhm.
All right, I like that, you put in that, in this, let me see here, that something about the tree bank funds, but I'd like to even be more specific and say the use of the tree bank funds should not be limited to the installation of plantings, but should also be permitted to be expended towards fertilizing, trimming, or whatever other planting maintenance is required in the specific area that has the tree bank fund trees.
Did you look at number 2, because that has a lot.
No, I
of
didn't look at
language.
number 2.
You go,
You mean number,
under 121, 8C2
yeah, that's where I am.
on page 13.
That's what I just read, the second paragraph.
But I'm a little confused with what you said, because that includes, I mean, the language is designed to include the maintenance and.
No, I think he's trying to add, so it's specifically saying only those trees.
In the
So
area where you're.
The town won't take tree fund money and go work on something that has nothing to do with tree.
Yeah, accidentally, we
Right.
planted 4 trees with the tree bank funds, and geez, the maintenance guy got it all wrong. He fertilized the entire park.
I think that was Tom's point last time.
That was
we
Tom's
met.
point last time, yeah. That
Right,
money would be
right.
only used for tree bank trees.
The way the tree bank fund is currently worked is, it's on a project basis, and that I anticipate will continue, that.
Well, then,
there's a
I'll give you my
specific
words,
project,
and
yeah.
and I'm not, I don't want to debate
Because
what
the
it should
idea
be,
is
but,
that through Sabrina and myself, we would recommend to the town board this project, and then there'd be a budget, and that amount of funds would be appropriated to
Well,
implement that.
I agree with all that, but I think the second paragraph, could be made more specific with the
Okay.
word specific.
Sure. You go. Okay.
Page 13? I like that you added that, for at least a 5-year term, but then I got thinking about it, and I said, well, maybe we should put an upper limit on it. But no more than 10 years.
Did we straighten that in the memo? Because I was confused by that in the memo.
Yeah, your memo.
This memo
added
that we
language.
got here, no, this
The
one?
one that you guys, we put together representing your comments
Uh-huh,
as
well.
language.
At
It's,
least 5 years, such term length to be determined by the.
Yep.
Yeah, but I would say at least 5, but no more than 10 years, such term to be determined. And that would also apply, on the next paragraph.
Want to cap it.
Well, because I know that none of us in this room today would, wander beyond the 5 to 10 year. I mean, Steve always wants at least 5 years, and not every project, but most of the projects we see, I think they really should be longer to 10 years. But I don't want someone saying for infinity or come back, and somebody new. Just trying to think of the future and everything. And then my last comment on page 3 of 3 of the memo, it says, in general, the planning board is concerned without greater public awareness, et cetera, there will continue to be violation of the code. And then we say, there feels there's a need for public education and outreach to inform, I would say, town residents and landscape contractors. Or landscape contractors and landscape architects.
And even tree removal people.
Okay, there's 4 things, but all those things, they,
Tree
they,
companies,
Contractors,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the guys who really should show up and go, hey, I can't cut this down without a
Exactly.
permit.
Yeah, because
back to
otherwise they say, type of thing, and
Yep.
it falls on the homeowner, but yet we have some people who are cowboys.
Absolutely. See it all over.
Yeehaw.
Last page,
last
last
one.
paragraph
Last paragraph,
Yeah.
last page.
of our memo.
That wouldn't be in the ordinance.
Jennifer,
On the memo.
in the proposed law, in numerous places, we've added this word simultaneously in terms of when there's a pending application. Why are we adding simultaneously when it's already a pending application? I just feel by adding that extra language, that extra word, which I don't think adds any meaning, we just open ourselves up for some attorney trying to slide through somewhere else. Well, it's not quite simultaneously, and do we need that? And it appears several times where it was added, whenever we have that kind of language about the approving authority and a pending application. Doesn't make any sense, does it? Is it necessary? Unless I missed something,
That,
I don't know.
that I would defer to the attorneys, because they provide.
they get paid by the word, yes, I know.
Yeah, so I think that was more the legal ease. I don't know if there's
Okay.
a legal reason for it or not.
I see your point, Bob. I'll check and see.
Okay.
Price higher.
Yes, yes, and it was a long word. 3 vowels. Okay. Anyone else, anything?
Yeah, does that,
No,
I mean,
I think
Very
this
good.
is moving along very nicely.
Good. Okay, any questions from staff?
how do you?
Steve, Jennifer, any questions for us?
No, I appreciate all the input and.
Great.
Oh, I appreciate the work that's been
Yeah.
done.
Yes.
This is
Yeah, the
gonna
town
help.
board is scheduling the public hearing for April 10th. You know, their plan is to keep it open,
Okay,
but,
so we'll try to get a memo out perhaps for the April 10th meeting, so they have something, which means
and
what,
the-
this Friday again?
For your information, the town board did review your previous memo and liked everything except they had questions on the 100%. You know,
With the
but-
canopy thing,
Yeah,
good.
but they actually wanted to have your comments incorporated as part of the draft,
Okay.
you know, those changes. So.
Well, we changed that, we took out the 100%
Yeah,
by his
actually,
memo,
good point.
which I gave to staff.
Do you all want to see the revised memo?
If you wish, it's fine by me.
Sure.
Why
You
not?
send it, I'll read it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, anything else? One quick thing, I did want to update the board. We had talked about having the second meeting in April. We talked about the transition zones again. I've been asked by the town board, well, actually Jill gave me a call and said that the town board is looking at zoning in general in the downtown, and transition zones are very important. It's part of it, but it's kind of a subset. So they were hopeful that we would work together on the zoning issues together on a broader basis, not just the transition zones. So they didn't want us to get ahead on the transition zones and perhaps, box ourselves in a little bit. And I thought that was, since I had such a giant budget to work with, I thought that was a good idea to listen to the town board and see if that worked out better. Because again, staff is tapped out in terms of, people and budget. So I thought rather than going off on our own way, that was a reasonable request. So I don't know when that will be, but I think frankly it'll be sooner than later. And I think what we'll do is probably have a couple of joint meetings with the town board on this important issue. But I think the conversation will be broader than just transition zones.
I think that's excellent. And at the same time, though, the transition zone discussion that we have doesn't necessarily have to come to conclusion or recommendation. It just could be part of a learning curve that we go on.
Yes.
And then have that to contribute to the larger conversation.
Yep.
And so I don't know exactly the kinds of materials that we need to pull together in order to educate ourselves about this. But maybe it's worthwhile to spend a little bit of time getting up to speed on a subject that not all of us really are prepared to go to a meeting with the town board and make a contribution.
That makes good
about.
sense.
So it means less work because we don't have to come up with recommendations, but it might be, I think it would be useful for us to at least come prepared to make a contribution.
Everybody read the 1933 book.
Yeah, and I think it's making the rounds. I don't know who has it now.
I have it. Could stay there a while. But, yeah, I think you gave it to me.
Might you give it back by 2033?
Well, you know, the decades do have a way of
They do.
leaving me behind.
Do you think that those meetings are April, May, June, if you were to guess?
I would say May, June,
May, June? Okay.
I would hope. But, I mean, there's nothing official. To a certain extent, this is pushing the town board because one of the things that we all talked about with the master plan, or, you know, the new plan, was that things had not been identified for priority. So I think they're coming to the same realization that this is something that needs to be looked at as a priority.
Good.
So it's moving ahead on the list.
We're trying to get them to come together on their priorities.
I think, you know, we can help.
I think your conversations have been helping.
Yes, yeah,
To be
yeah.
quite honest with you. But, you know, you say May, June, I can only hope May, June.
I was just throwing months out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
I-
understand that. We're, you know,
You forgot to ask which year.
But, you know, I think to Tom's point, what we can do again is
Start studying.
Look,
studying, but also set up a half of one of our meetings and have a discussion item on it.
here's something about this, though, that I mean, I understand their prerogative, right? And I appreciate that it is their prerogative to write the legislation, whatever it might be, whenever it might happen. But that needs to recognize that we have applications that come before us, and we have to act on the applications. We have no choice but to act on the applications. And it's not a theoretical conversation for us. It's a real life situation that we need to deal with. So I do think that it would be useful for us to, again, as I say, not necessarily come up with recommendations, but I think it would be useful for us to make the point that we do have these concerns because they are presented to us, right? And that that it is better sooner than later that if the town board asks us to fold this into the larger conversation, that we need to start having that conversation for our purposes quickly.
And I think also when we had our conversation at that last meeting, what I thought was also very interesting was not only is it a practical issue for us because we have real applications, but it became clear to all of us, I think, when we heard from Bill Spade, that there are people who interpret transition zones completely differently.
Right.
And, you know, Bill's on the development side, he's an architect, so when you start hearing that you have that kind of interpretation that seems to be 180 degrees opposite of ours, there is need for clarification, it seems to me, because he represents that side. And so I thought that was a real eye-opener for me, that when he came up and spoke and said, well, this is not what I think transition is. I mean, transition means you blow these things out, and what Greenwich did is what you want to do. You want to accommodate the developers, and the transition is that, you know, our current zones are constraining development way too tightly. So
Right.
we need to expand it. So, wow, that was a shock.
Yeah,
No.
the term
What are-
actually technically does have two definitions.
Yep.
And so no wonder there's a confusion about it.
Yep.
And if the town board is under one definition, which was represented, I think, by Bill very well.
Yep.
That's not what we are talking about. We're talking about the other definition, which is on the parcels that are on, only the parcels that are on the boundary.
Right, and I think what Bill and his wife produced is more to the second point as opposed to the one that he gave us a speech on.
Correct.
Right.
Because
In
of
terms
the,
of the Bedford Road
yeah,
project.
the setbacks were consistent and in fact, a little bit better than the buildings next door, and the height was under control, and so we did a lot of the things.
Yeah, I'm not sure we did enough, but
I'm not arguing,
But
but
at
we did a
least
lot
we-
of them, and it
you're
would be a
correct.
great case study to go back and look at and see, well, what would we have changed without getting into too much minutia.
Well, again, we had decided that's what we would try to do, look at 91 Bedford as a case study
Yeah.
now that it's fully approved and it's on its way. And I think maybe, you know, we could do that. We could do that, you know, on the cheap, if you will, and look at the case study, and we can really flesh out some of the issues. I think it's important, first of all, get that clarification out in terms of what we think the transition zone means. I think that's a service, frankly, to everyone, and give the town board some idea where we're coming from. Hopefully they're on board with the same interpretation.
Yeah, well, I thought we were pretty clear about that in the last meeting when Bill made his
Oh, I thought so.
presentation. So maybe we just need to re-clarify that and see how the town board takes that. Perhaps they just don't want us to really advance any of the discussion right now. But I think that I think that there would be a useful purpose to do so and not threaten the end result of their conversations, but contribute to it. And I understand that staff has limitations, because if you really go down this road and you look at all the conditions that exist between, the other day I just made the list. I looked at the zoning map and I put together a matrix of the residential zones and then all the other zones that abut that. You end up with 15, 20 different conditions that then one would ideally look at in all the combinations as separate conditions, where you would begin to then craft transition zone requirements for those particular lots, and that's a big job. It's a big discussion in terms of actually coming to recommendations. But to actually do the work which identifies where these things are and what the issues are in these zones specifically, I think it's something that would be good for us to do. And I'm happy to I've already started, just for my own purposes, take the lead in putting some of this material together for my own purposes. I could share this with town staff and in a reactive mode, and like with Sabrina, and say, here's where I'm going with this, what do you think? Without really engaging a real work effort on your part, on town staff part, and see where we go.
Sure, if that's okay.
We'll have a conversation, see where it goes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I also think it's important that I think that the town board's priority that they are discussing might be much broader than the transition zone. Just for your information.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They made it
They're
quite
looking
clear.
at zoning.
Well, their definition of transition zone is the classic zoning tree, right? Where you go
I
from
can't
the-
answer that to you.
No, fair enough.
we're
But I'm
giving you
guessing
a
that's
scenario.
their biggest concern is rezoning at that level. That's what I'm guessing, not lot by lot. So, and that's a much broader conversation about the future of the hamlets and the town in general. I don't think we're talking about that.
And we have geographical, aspects of Chappaqua that make it very difficult to just do something like New Rochelle was doing, where they've set a zone up and worked on the corner buildings and the setbacks for light and everything else, that thing we went to see, which I thought was fascinating. It was
It's form-based zoning.
yeah, form-based, exactly.
We don't have that type of,
No.
not now.
Right.
Oh,
Good.
that's a different kind of thing.
I think we're kind of booked, though, for April 17th.
Yep.
But maybe one of the May meetings, we can set up some time
Maybe.
and
Let me
have a
see.
conversation.
What we come up with, and then we'll see whether it's agenda-worthy.
Sure, good. Agenda worthy.
Agenda worth.
It's a low standard based on my experience here, but
Hey.
I'm only commenting about some of the applications.
Time to adjourn.
Yes. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone have a great evening.